I'm excited to chat with everybody tonight. And of course, Dr. Williams, she has a lot of information for you all, you know. I think we just really need to start debunking a lot of the things that are being shown, that shows up on social media. And, you know, get down to the nitty-gritty of getting our lives back, right?
For sure, for sure. Now, Angèle is going to be
I'm
my
hearing you too well, Fingal. Yeah.
You hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Now, Angèle is my co-host, as I just introduced her, and she and I are going to be talking to our special guest very shortly. But before we get there, Angèle has a disclaimer for us and some words of some advice for us as well. So, Angèle, you let us know what's going
on. Yes, before we begin, a lot of medical information would be shared on vaccines and whatnot. However, if you do have any known medical problems that you are not quite certain about, please do consult your doctor specifically. Yeah. So, so I think before we start, I think everybody needs to understand that, you know, this is a situation that affects everyone. I think we definitely have gone on with this for over a year, and it's just reaching a breaking point where how much longer can we go? And I mean, my colleagues and I have been working at a pace that is maximum for the past couple of months. Dr. Richards reminds us at every single press conference, you know, that a bed isn't just a bed. It's your human resources as well as the adjuncts to healthcare. And of course, to be able to continue like this, eventually things will be depleted. So what are the next steps that we could take to move into the next phase? And that's really where we want to be headed. It really does go beyond the scope of your lives and livelihoods. Of course, being locked down on SOE, it affects our physical and mental health to a significant level. So I think people need to remember that, you know, coronaviruses have been around for a very long time, since the 1960s, 1970s, and a lot of the foundation work in terms of the science would have been done in terms of biochemical engineering, as Dr. Williams would share with us shortly. So having a vaccine produced in such a short space of time should really be alarming, because these scientists have been working around the clock as well as with the resources they were had access to be able to provide us with a vaccine. You know, people may argue the COVID-19 vaccines, they don't prevent us from getting the coronavirus infection. However, it significantly reduces the risk of hospitalization, severity of disease, long-term complications, and particularly death. Now, young people would say things like, okay, well, I'm young and I'm healthy, I can mount an immune response, but we don't have enough concrete information in terms of, you know, how long that will last, as well as how well it is, and that we do know for vaccinations. But I think what would be the most important thing right now with our huge number of cases is the reality that we are excellent hosts, you know. Our body provides a roof, it provides food for these viruses to replicate in our mucosal linings, as your eyes, your ear, your nose, your mouth. And because of that, we are at a greater risk of having mutations, which are a change in the virus's original structure. With that change, we have more resilient, greater infectious rates, as well as a much severer disease that persons are having. And we see that with the UK variants, the South African, as well as the Brazilian. So we want to flip that switch on the vaccine hesitancy, because, you know, it's a situation where you're seeing people in the hospital, and I'm talking like their relatives are ill and sick and struggling for their life, and they're still unsure. Of course, there are several factors which play a role in vaccine hesitancy, which would span from whether it's religious, cultural, lack of faith in the governing bodies, as well as the vast amount of information we have access to right now on the internet. You know, we don't know what's fact from fiction, so we pull in teeth essentially. But I don't want to be too long. Dr. Williams really has a lot to talk to us about. So I think we can head over to her.
Right. Thank you for that little update there one time. Let me see if I could get Dr. Williams.
I think she's
in.
I just saw her join.
You saw her join in?
Yeah.
Okay, vibes are fine. And her here now. All right, cool. Okay, I got her there. Now, without any further ado, I feeling like it's me and two big doctors here, and I just, you know what, I am here to represent the, I am here to ask the questions that we all want to know. Now, bringing to the stage, she's here with us right now, Dr. Astra Williams, a Trinidad and Tobago national scholar. She works with the United Nations to promote confidence around COVID-19 vaccines. She studied biomolecular engineering and chemical engineering at the New York University, and she worked as a NASA bioengineering research intern before pursuing a PhD in chemical engineering at the RBI Institute. Dr. Williams is listed as one of 1,000 inspiring Black scientists in America and a 2020 MIT Rising Star in chemical engineering. Ladies and gentlemen, bring into the stage some emojis in the chat for Dr. Astra Williams. Hello.
Hi. Hey everyone. Thanks for the
We are super excited to have you on. Everyone is up.
Excited for this chat. So I can give a brief intro on top of Aaron's intro. So I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago. Born and raised, I grew up mostly in Arima. I went to Locketton North Government Primary, then I went to SAGS. So I moved to the US after high school for tertiary education. And just a disclaimer, I don't work with any of these pharmaceutical companies. Yes, I do work with the United Nations, but it's completely voluntary. I'm not being paid by Bill Gates or Big Pharma or anything. I'm just here to share information based on my expertise and my work in vaccine development.
Right, all right.
So, this girl.
Unbiased opinions. You're just coming here with some facts and some information to share with us and the wider public.
Right, so people can make informed decisions.
Very nice, very nice, very nice. So, Dr. Astra Williams, Angèle, I'm going to start one time. So you told us a little bit about yourself. Now, just ball rolling one time. Can you tell us a little bit more about what is a vaccination and what is the purpose of vaccinations and getting vaccinated?
Yeah, so a vaccine is essentially a safe and effective way to protect people against a harmful disease without having them coming into contact directly with the disease-causing agent. So there's this common misconception that the vaccine was created to prevent COVID-19. So once you get vaccinated, you have full protection, you're good to go. No, the ultimate aim of the vaccine is to reduce the infection rates, reduce transmission rates, reduce the severity of infection if you do get infected, and prevent the deaths from COVID-19 that we're seeing right now. And once we get those things under control, eventually the prevalence of the virus within the population will be so low that we get to a point of herd immunity and we can kind of slowly go back to normal with things. And if you think of how the immune system works, so you have innate immunity and adaptive immunity. You kind of have two sides. So innate immunity is like your natural protection that you're born with. If you have an infection, that's the first line of defense that's going to kick in. So things like getting a fever, it cranks up the temperature. You can produce extra mucus to kind of flush pathogens out of your system. And that response will typically happen within a few hours or minutes of being exposed. And if that's not enough, the second thing that kicks in is your adaptive immune system. So that involves, chemicals, proteins, antibodies within your body. And those are very specific to whatever is invading. So for example, the white blood cells that you get against SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, won't be able to protect you from the influenza virus that causes the flu. So it's very specific. And that protection takes about a couple of days to a couple of weeks to develop. So it takes a really long time to get that adaptive immunity built up. But what vaccines do is they kind of give you a sneak peek. They kind of fast forward that adaptive immunity process. So the vaccine will train your immune system to create antibodies. So you kind of stay ready, so you don't have to get ready when you do eventually get exposed. So that's kind of the benefit of vaccines. It's getting rid of that long lag period where your body kind of catches up with what's going on. So you can respond immediately and prevent yourself from having serious infection or going on to spread it to a bunch of other people.
Right. Angèle?
Okay, Dr. Williams. Could you tell us a little bit about herd immunity and what percentages we should be looking at for Trinidad and Tobago and what we should expect by reaching herd immunity?
Yeah, so herd immunity is essentially a concept where enough of a population is either vaccinated or previously infected with a disease so that the prevalence of the disease within the population is reduced, and transmission is highly unlikely. I think the percentage required for herd immunity varies a lot, especially when you have variants present. So essentially the presence of a variant, especially a more transmissible variant like the P1 variant in Trinidad, that kind of increases the threshold of vaccination and infection needed to reach herd immunity. So I would say 80 to 90% of the population, ideally. And I know that's a lot of people, but I think people who have the idea that, okay, I don't need to get vaccinated because everyone else will get vaccinated and I will benefit from herd immunity, I will get the community protection. But it's important to remember that there are a lot of people within the population who can get vaccinated for medical reasons, or there are a lot of children within the population who aren't eligible for vaccination. So they are depending on the people who are eligible to get vaccinated to help us get to herd immunity so they can benefit from that protection.
No, Dr. Williams. My next question, I have like two parts. So in your opinion, can you tell us what is the best vaccination someone can get? And in particular, I want you to tell us a little bit more about the Astra Zeneca and the Sinopharm vaccines, because those are the two that are available to us here in Tobago right now.
Yeah. Okay, so first I always say this, the best vaccine to get is the one available to you first. It probably sounds cliche at this point. But I think when you look at the different vaccines that are available on the market, it's really easy to just focus on the efficacy numbers and rate the vaccines based on that. But you can't really directly compare overall efficacy data because essentially the clinical trials that were done to get these efficacy numbers, they took place in different parts of the world, within different populations at different times. So at different points of the pandemic when different variants were circulating. And the way that the trials were conducted were also slightly different. So there was no head-to-head comparison between two specific vaccines or among 3 different vaccines or anything like that. So you can't really directly compare those numbers to deem any one vaccine as being better than another. I think the important thing to note, though, is that all of the currently approved vaccines showed 100% protection from severe disease, hospitalization, and death during clinical trials. So that's the main thing that we want to get from a vaccine, and all of the approved vaccines do provide that. In terms of the ones available in Trinidad now, yeah, AstraZeneca and Sinopharm. I've heard a couple of people say things like, oh, well, I want to wait around until we get Pfizer or something like that before I get vaccinated. Well, waiting around to get vaccinated is very risky because you run the risk of potentially contracting COVID-19 during that waiting period. And you can get severely ill, or if you don't, you may be asymptomatic, pass it on to somebody else within your family, your friends, or a stranger, somebody who's more vulnerable and could get severely ill or even die from the disease. So you definitely run that risk with the whole waiting, especially in the environment currently in Trinidad where there's such a high prevalence of the virus and also variants circulating. It's really important to get vaccinated as soon as you can, whichever option is available. So the types of vaccines, AstraZeneca is what you would call a viral vector vaccine. And a vector simply means a vehicle, like a delivery system. So it uses a virus, another virus, which causes the common cold. Essentially, they manipulate that virus, remove all of the machinery, the things that make it a virus, and they use it as a vehicle to transport genetic material to your cells. And that genetic material teaches your cells how to make a spike protein, which is the protein found on the surface of the coronavirus. And that's a protein that the virus uses to enter your cells and infect you. So essentially, once your body gets that information, it's kind of like an email or a Snapchat. It reads it, gets the information, and then it disappears. It breaks down within 72 hours. Makes the spike protein. Your immune system realizes, hey, this isn't supposed to be there. It mounts an immune response and produces antibodies, memory cells that would protect you from future infection. So that's kind of the technology behind the AstraZeneca vaccine. The Sinopharm vaccine is more of a traditional type of vaccine. It's an inactivated virus. So essentially they kill the coronavirus, and that's what it is mixed with other ingredients which are safe and tested, called adjuvants, which help to boost the immune response from the vaccine. And essentially, it's the same idea. You're exposing your body to the pathogen. Your body realizes it's not supposed to be there, mounts an immune response to protect you. In terms of the dosing, they're both 2 doses. Sinopharm has a shorter interval. I think it's 3 to 4 weeks, whereas AstraZeneca is about 8 to 12 weeks between doses. And they can both be stored at lower, higher temperatures than the Pfizer and Moderna. So they're more suitable for developing parts of the world or warmer climates in terms of the logistics for transportation, etc. They're more suitable.
Okay. I didn't know that there was a difference in how you could store them. So obviously that one would be easier to store here in the Caribbean.
Exactly. And that's kind of part of the appeal for these types of climates and different countries where transportation is much easier compared to the others that require these specialized freezers, etc., for storage.
Right. No, I did my research here, but I still learned something new here today as well. So, Angèle, anymore? You have another question for me?
So in terms of the killed vaccine, the mechanisms of killing, is it chemical or radiation or combination?
Yeah.
Or...
So they do use a chemical. It's called beta propiolactone. So it's essentially a chemical that's used in different vaccines. It inactivates the virus by binding to its genes, so the genes can no longer replicate, the virus can no longer replicate or be infectious, essentially. And then they separate out that chemical from the killed virus and combine it with aluminum hydroxide based adjuvant, which is something that's commonly used, not dangerous. I know people hear aluminum and get scared, but we actually consume a lot of aluminum in our diet on a daily basis, and it's a very tiny amount in the vaccine. So, yeah, that's essentially the technology.
So essentially, what Dr. Williams is saying is that you cannot be infected from getting a vaccine.
Correct.
Absolutely not. It's killed completely. It's not virulent. It cannot cause any harm. It cannot cause a baby infection. It cannot cause a little... It will not cause any sort of infection or disease. Yes?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Correct.
All right. So in terms of the 2-dose vaccines, persons are asking, can I take one particular brand and then have the booster 2nd dose with another brand? What are you asking?
Yeah. So ideally, you want to stick to what's recommended by manufacturers, just because that's what we have data from based on clinical trials. So we know for sure if you take 2 doses of, for example, AstraZeneca, with this interval between the doses, you're going to get this much protection from the vaccine. But if you kind of stray from that and mix different vaccines, we aren't really sure how much protection you can get from that, or how efficacious that would be. I know there are trials in Europe right now where they're looking at 1 dose of AstraZeneca and then 1 dose of Pfizer, and they saw that that worked really well in terms of generating an immune response. But in terms of the vaccines available for Trinidad, I don't think they've done any studies of like an inactivated virus versus adenovirus or mRNA vaccine.
No, I sorry to bring it to this, but I'm a
Mm-hmm.
party goer. So usually, if I start my night and I drink in rum, right, I try to continue drinking rum throughout the night. If I mix my alcohols and end up drinking scotch and vodka, I might start to feel a little uneasy before the end of the night now. So that's kind of how it is with the vaccine as well.
Um, I wouldn't say it's exactly like that. It's more so when you get your first dose of the vaccine, that's a primer for your immune system because it's seeing the pathogen for the first time. Then when you get your second dose, your body's like, wait a minute, we saw this guy already, and you get like a more robust immune response. That's why you end up for the second dose, most people tend to have more side effects because that's your body responding to the vaccine essentially. So in theory, your body can't really differentiate which manufacturer the vaccine is coming from when it enters your body. You just need two exposures, your first shot and your second shot. So in theory, it should be okay to mix vaccines, but because we don't have the solid data or numbers on that, is not really 100% recommended right now.
Mm. Now, okay, for my next question, um, the daily rates in Trinidad have been
Mm-hmm.
very much higher than we would.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
we're
not
seeing,
nice.
we're seeing a lot of cases on a daily basis for the last few weeks. And we've been under a state of emergency lockdown for a few
Mm-hmm.
days, but we've still been seeing a lot of cases. And a lot of people are asking, well, if we are on lockdown, how it still has so much cases? What's going on? So could you tell us a little bit more about how we still seeing this rise in cases and what is causing this transfer of the COVID-19 disease across different people, etc. Can you let us know that, please?
Yeah, I think this spike started probably months ago when there was a lot of movement of people mingling for different reasons. Just in general, the population not really
Mhm.
taking things as seriously as they should, a lot of public and private gatherings. I think they had loosened restrictions for sporting events, things like that. So you just had a lot of opportunity for the virus to really effectively spread and get a good grip on the population, unfortunately. And then you also have things like the P1 variant, which is twice as infectious, which would also contribute to those numbers. I think now with the lockdown, people think that, okay, everything is locked down or we're on a state of emergency and we have a curfew, so things should just kind of go back to normal. But a lot of that depends on people's personal behavior. The country could be locked down, borders closed, everything. But if people within the country are still not masking, still trying to secretly meet up with people and gather and kind of ignore those rules,
Mhm.
then you're still going to see cases continuing to rise. And I think something else, a lot of home quarantining is also happening in Trinidad, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And that's kind of tricky. I
Mhm.
understand like there isn't, facilities probably available to have people quarantining separately, etc. But when you have people quarantining at home, especially in environments where you can't necessarily fully isolate that person, they're still going to be interacting with other members of the family.
Yeah.
And then the rate of vaccination or the level of vaccination within the population of Trinidad and Tobago is really low right now. So it's kind of uh, a lot of factors that are colliding for the perfect storm, essentially, like having an unvaccinated population that's still mingling. That's
Mhm.
like the perfect situation for a virus to continue to spread.
Okay, so Dr. Williams, in terms of, patients ask this all the time, and I've seen so many posts about it on social
Mm-hmm.
media as well. In terms of influenza and COVID-19, please enlighten us a bit about people saying things like, okay, well, I got the flu several times, so, I should be able to fight off COVID-19. It's
Mm,
essentially
yeah. Okay.
yeah, in terms of the mortality
So
rates. Mhm.
yeah. So there's definitely this perception that COVID-19 is just like the flu. I think probably because the symptoms are so similar, it might be difficult to differentiate between the two based on symptoms alone. But there are really some
Yeah.
key differences. firstly, most obviously, COVID-19 is caused by a completely different virus, SARS-CoV-2, whereas the flu is caused by the influenza virus. So that's like completely different families of viruses. Also, because the flu, has been within the population for a long time versus COVID-19, which is relatively new, you have many more people who are susceptible to infection by COVID-19 because there's really little pre-existing immunity to the virus. So through vaccinations and previous infections, there is a big portion of the population that already has some type of immunity to influenza. It's still very widespread, but it's less of a threat. And in the US, in 1 year, COVID-19 actually killed more people than the flu did in the past 9 seasons. So, it's really difficult to try to compare those two diseases. And just overall, COVID-19 has a higher rate of severe disease. It has a higher mortality rate than influenza in all age groups, except maybe like kids under 12. People, it's not, they're definitely not on the same level. Yes, influenza is also a significant burden, but COVID-19 has like a significantly larger effect on the population. So it definitely needs to be taken more seriously.
For sure. Now, just to reset the room here, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, my name is Fingal. I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Angèle Mark, and we are here with special guest, Dr. Asha Williams, who has all the, she had the on the vaccine and on COVID. We have all the information here for you, and we're bringing it to you as best as we can. Now, to my beautiful doctors on the panel here. Over the last couple of days, the Carnival Tribe Instagram, we have been opening up our comments, etc., for questions by our followers, fans, friends that have been submitted. So I have a list of them here. Questions from the public, from the people, things that they want to know right here, right now, that they may not be getting a clear understanding and an answer from when they do their personal searches. So, to get the ball rolling with those one time, and Angèle, I know you have this list as well in front of you too. I'm going to start it with, why do I still need to take the vaccine if I already had COVID? This is a user submitted question.
So most people who have or had COVID-19 develop some type of immunity, but not everyone does. The problem with natural infection or immunity from natural infection is that it's highly variable. It varies a lot from person to person. Whereas with your vaccine, that has been designed and adjusted for an equal immune response across a wide variety of people. So getting COVID-19 might offer, some short-term protection or immunity from reinfection, but it's not clear how long this protection lasts. And in many studies, they're seeing that the protection that people obtain from natural infection, it tends to taper off really quickly. So you have protection maybe for 3 to 6 months, and then it just really quickly dives. So in order to guarantee that you're protected, you definitely still want to go ahead and get vaccinated. Also, there are some studies that show that the immunity that you get from vaccination is actually able to provide you with more protection against variants as compared to a natural infection. So that's another plus associated with vaccination versus natural infection.
So in terms of taking vitamins, why not just take the vitamins, eat all your fruits and vegetables, get in, an hour of exercise, maybe 5 times for the week. That I feel pretty healthy. Why should I be vaccinated?
Yeah. Okay. So back to what I was saying about how the immune system works. You have your innate immunity and your adaptive immunity, and that's it. Things like vitamins, herbal remedies, natural supplements, they are good to keep your immune system functioning or working as well as it possibly can, but ultimately you can't really boost your immune system using those things. And I use this analogy. You can think of it like as a student. So the vaccine essentially provides you with a cheat sheet, right? if you're taking an exam, you can be the best student, have your uniform in check, you're on time every day, all the teachers love you. But if you have an exam in front of you that's in a subject that you've never taken before, you're not going to do well in it no matter what. So when you get your vaccine, that provides you with a cheat sheet. So you're able to do well on it. So those things, you know, the vitamins, etc., exercise, those things are really good to keep your immune system in good working conditions. But ultimately, when you're faced with the challenge of a virus, an unknown virus, you still have to go through that whole process related to adaptive immunity to really get an immune response. So either way, healthy, unhealthy, immunocompromised, not immunocompromised, vaccination is still the best way to protect yourself against a virus.
Yeah, absolutely. Still eat all your fruits and vegetables and still exercise. Definitely. We're not taking away from that at all. Like, it definitely serves a purpose. So, and as Dr. Williams said, you're going to be the best version of yourself to be able to fight it anyway. So let's just continue your lifestyle interventions, but also recognize that the function of vaccination has maybe the core of it, and then the fruits and vegetables and the exercise sort of on the periphery right now.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll just add that there is one vitamin, vitamin D. If you're deficient in vitamin D, you're more likely to have a severe form of a respiratory infection if you do have one. So you want to make sure you're not deficient in vitamin D. But if you take, you know, excess, way more than you need, it's not really going to help in the way that people seem to think. But yeah.
Yes. So absolutely go out. Have a walk in the sunshine, guys. Okay? It's extremely important. Just because you're at home doesn't mean you have to stay inside.
Right. So another common question that we got in the comments, can you still spread the virus after being vaccinated? And if you can still get the virus after being vaccinated, then what's the point of taking the vaccine?
Right. So I'll use another analogy, the seatbelt thing. So the vaccine is kind of like a seatbelt. You don't get into your car and start driving with your seatbelt on and say, well, now that I have my seatbelt on, I absolutely cannot get into an accident. I'm 100% protected on the road. No, a seatbelt helps to reduce the severity of injury if you do get into an accident. Same with a vaccine. It lowers your risk of having a severe infection or dying from a disease. But there is still that small chance that you can get infected, that you can get into an accident. So I definitely want to remind people of that. It's not, you know, a black and white situation where once you have your vaccine, you're good to go, you're 100% protected. No, it's layers of protection. So you want to get your vaccine, but you also want to continue wearing your mask, social distancing, doing all the things that you need to do to protect yourself until the population gets to a point of herd immunity where the rate of transmission is really low and the risk is really low for reinfection. So yeah, that's.
So again, so it come like, I like your analogies because it breaks it down for us, right? I have another analogy too. I don't know if it will be correct, but it's like, again, I like to party, right? But before I go partying, and I know that I might be drinking alcohol, etc., in my party, I need to eat something to make sure my stomach settled and I have something on my system before now.
Right.
Because let's go out there with nothing in my stomach, I might end up getting a more adverse reaction to the alcohol in the party. So it's come like that kind of. You can tell me if I'm wrong. You can tell me if I'm wrong.
I mean, yeah, you could say that. It is a preventative measure. And again, even if you eat before the party, it doesn't mean that you won't end up drunk at the end of the night. But it's sort of a preventative measure. But I also want to underscore the fact that these breakthrough cases, or people getting reinfected after vaccination, the numbers have been extremely low so far for the vaccines that I've looked, well, mainly the mRNA vaccines, but the rate of reinfection is not very high. So it's not like, people think the vaccine is kind of useless because I'm still going to get sick. No, that's not the case at all. You still get a decent amount of protection with the vaccine, but you want to continue adhering to like public health guidelines on top of that until the rest of the population is also vaccinated.
Okay,
Right.
so I saw someone asking about what is the recovery time for being vaccinated. So I think they maybe wanted to frame that question better, because recovery really speaks about having an illness. And when you're vaccinated, you aren't ill. However, you have symptoms simply because you are mounting an immune response. So in terms of that time frame, I think was what they wanted to ask. Well, how would you classify that period?
Yeah, so that's variable from person to person. Some people, they get really down and out, especially after the second dose. For example, when I took my second dose, I was out the day after. I was just in bed all day, taking Tylenol, drinking water. And then the following day, I was okay. I have another friend who was really ill for like 3 days before she bounced back. And I also know people who had absolutely no side effects except for the sore arm where they got the injection. So it's kind of variable from person to person, but having more or less side effects after vaccination, that doesn't mean that, you know, the vaccine is more or less effective. It's more a function of the diversity of our immune systems from person to person. But typically, most people don't have symptoms beyond a week, and that's pushing it.
Yeah. And I think too, what I was seeing particularly in healthcare professionals in Trinidad would be that the younger persons obviously would have severe symptoms simply because they were mounting a stronger immune response compared to older persons. So I think that may have been a concern for some people, like, oh, am I getting COVID-19 infection? No, it just means your immune system is doing an excellent job at doing what it's supposed to be doing. Yeah?
Exactly. Yeah, side effects are a good thing. You're not contagious at all.
Another interesting question. I'm not sure if Angèle kind of just touched on this, but someone asked, if I contract the COVID-19 disease after my shot, but waiting for the second shot, should I wait? What is the procedure? Should I wait a little longer than the said time, or?
So it depends on how close to like your scheduled second dose. But essentially, the rule of thumb is if you have COVID-19, you want to wait until you're no longer symptomatic to the point where you need to quarantine or anything like that before you get your vaccine dose. So I know in the US, they just tell you wait until all of your COVID-19 symptoms disappear and you're good to go. But in other countries, maybe in Trinidad, they have people waiting longer to get vaccinated if they've already had COVID-19 because there's limited supply. But if you've had your first dose already, just wait until the symptoms disappear and then you're good to go.
In terms of breastfeeding and pregnant women, where are we in terms of that, particularly for Sinopharm and Astra Zeneca?
So I know for sure that AstraZeneca in some European countries, etc., they are definitely recommending it for pregnant women, especially because pregnant women who get infected with COVID-19 are at extremely high risk for having a very severe form of the illness and also having an adverse outcome for their unborn child. So it's really serious. If you look at, I think it was Brazil, they actually had a big crisis with maternal deaths. A lot of pregnant women were dying of COVID-19. Yeah, the government was actually discouraging people from getting pregnant because of the disease, not the vaccine, the disease. Yeah, it was really getting at pregnant women. So the rule is that, yes, pregnant women are part of the high priority group to get vaccinated. With Sinopharm, they did not specifically do a clinical trial for pregnant women, but the World Health Organization is recommending it for pregnant women in situations where you are at high risk. So for example, if you work in a healthcare setting or any kind of care setting where you're constantly in contact with other people or directly in contact with somebody who may have COVID-19, then you're at high risk for exposure, and it's recommended that you definitely get vaccinated because the benefits significantly outweigh any risks associated with the vaccine. But that being said, with clinical trials aside, we do have a lot of real world data showing that the vaccines are safe in pregnant women. There haven't been any reports of any serious adverse reactions or events related to that. So I would always advise pregnant women to talk to their healthcare provider, of course, because they would know the specifics of your particular pregnancy. But generally, it's recommended.
And I breastfeeding women as yet. No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you wish to be vaccinated, you can, but currently, they haven't reached that.
Hello.
I guess you had a
welcome back.
Y'all hearing me?
A bit of technical difficulties. I was saying just before we got cut off, I think it's important for people to understand as well for the clinical trials with vaccination. Remember, these are all volunteers. So essentially, in terms of the pregnant woman, having pregnant women volunteer for clinical trials is probably a greater challenge, I would imagine, compared to the general public, right?
Right, and you also have people who became pregnant during the clinical trials.
Right.
So yeah,
that would have changed some things. Yes. Yes, Fingal.
Now, guys, we have just about 5-10 more minutes, and because the live restarted, some people ask some questions, but the questions will be going now because it's a new live. So I want those in the comments viewing with us now to send some questions in the little question box below, and we will try to answer a few of these questions before we wrap for the night. But again, if you're just joining us, hello, my name is Fingal, your host for today, alongside my co-host, Dr. Angèle Mark, right here from Trinidad and Tobago, and our calling all them it's again. Our COVID-19 specialist, Dr. Williams, who took some time to join us and just give us a little more insight and more information on what's really been going on with the vaccine and our vaccine situation, and of course our COVID-19 situation here in Trinidad. Wow, look at questions. Let me see if I could get a few of them. Oh gosh, this one is very interesting. Dr. Asha Williams, I will let you organize with that question there for a second.
Oh, you know what's funny? Well, not funny, but no, there's no evidence that the vaccine causes erectile dysfunction, but there is a ton of evidence that COVID-19 actually causes male infertility and erectile dysfunction. And this is backed up by solid data that we know for sure. So
solid internationally, as well as what is being seen in Trinidad and Tobago.
There you go.
Have been patients who have presented who have been COVID positive in Trinidad and Tobago. So
yeah.
Another reason to be
it's a serious disease, guys. It's serious. Don't take it lightly.
Okay. Hold on. So this is actual factual facts.
Yes.
COVID-19, the disease, tends to cause or may cause erectile dysfunction.
And male infertility, yes.
And male infertility as in sperm production. So you can't have a child.
Or it will be more difficult to do so.
In terms of whether it is permanent and the duration, that hasn't been researched as yet. But for the immediate signs and symptoms, yes, that is correct.
All right.
I think one more thing I would add about COVID-19, I think people look at it as just, that 14-day period where somebody gets sick, they have flu-like symptoms, they recover, boom. But on top of, the people who get seriously ill and end up in the hospital, the people who die of COVID-19, about a third of people who were never sick enough to become hospitalized from COVID-19, they get the disease, they recover. Months down the road, they're popping up with heart issues, lung issues, neurological problems. And this is like a third of people, no small number. So, just keep that in mind. Long COVID is a real thing. a third of people are popping up months down the road with these issues. I have a friend in New York who got COVID last year. They recovered, lost their sense of smell and taste, and it came back. They were good to go. And then a couple of weeks ago, they're like, oh my gosh, I lost my sense of smell and taste again. So it's, the disease is something that we're still learning about. It's not something that you just want to take a chance with and say, oh, my body will fight it off. When you have a vaccine available that can provide that protection from the disease.
Yeah, and it's, when you think about this, it's also the basis of primary care, your primary care pushes prevention is always better than cure.
Yeah.
So the people who are on the spectrum of, eat your fruits and vegetables, exercise, live your lifestyle a particular way, don't smoke, etc. If that is your motto, I think, you actually do fall into that category of, you should be vaccinated and prevent yourself from contracting the virus.
Yeah, and a vaccine is not, I hear a lot of people saying, oh, I don't want to put this foreign substance into my body, etc. But vaccines are designed to reduce the risk of infection by working with your body's natural defenses. So it's just something that adds to what your body already naturally does. So it is something natural in that sense.
Yeah.
All right. So similar to that last question, which have me a little shaken. We got a question here. Does it affect fertility in men and women, or the ability to get pregnant as well?
What, the vaccine, the virus?
Well, let's talk about the vaccine and the virus.
Fertility, no, for the vaccine. If you look at how all of these vaccines work, they are non-replicating vaccines. So it's not something that will get into your human cells and can replicate in different cells throughout your body. It doesn't interact with your reproductive system, your reproductive organs in any way. So no effect on fertility. I definitely would not take anything that would affect my fertility, and I wouldn't recommend it to any of my friends or family either. So that's just because there's no evidence to support that concerning the vaccine. In terms of the virus, I'm not sure for women. I know for sure males are affected, but I don't think, or based on what I've read, I haven't seen much on women being affected.
There haven't been any solid evidence in terms of females for fertility.
But definitely the men.
Another submitted question in the comments: which variant of the virus has been most prevalent in the Caribbean as of?
I actually don't know. Honestly, I don't really track Caribbean-wide news. I mostly just mark what's happening in Trinidad because I want to come home. But I'm not really sure Caribbean-wide.
Where are you stationed, Dr. Williams?
I'm in New York.
Perhaps all of that open back already then.
Yeah, but I'm still wearing my mask. They basically said, like, no restrictions, we're good to go back to normal, but nah, I don't trust people. There's this thing in the US called, where people are saying they're trans-vaccinated, which means you're not really vaccinated, but you identify as being vaccinated. So you have a lot of people who... The rule is if you're vaccinated, you can go out with no mask, you're good to go. If you're unvaccinated, you still need to wear your mask. But of course, they're not really checking that. So you have unvaccinated people just out here.
No, but that is real? Like, what you just
there are a lot of people. The anti-vax movement in the US is a big thing. Yeah.
They identify as vaccinated.
Yes.
All right. I ain't heard that one before. Another question we have here is how long should I wait before getting other vaccines, for example, vaccines that you get before going to university? Yeah,
so generally, I think like a 2-week gap is good. Essentially, you want to wait until you fully recover from any side effects associated with your COVID-19 vaccine. Until you feel better. So that would normally go away within a couple of days, but they recommend like a 2-week gap at least. And this is not because, there's any danger of the vaccines interacting or anything like that. It's more a situation where you don't want to take 2 vaccines really close together and then you're not sure which vaccine caused which side effect, and so you aren't really able to treat it properly. So about a 2-week gap is good.
It's basically the same thing with childhood immunizations. So usually when your child is being immunized before you go to school, it's the same thing. You wait that period before, on your immunization schedule.
This is an interesting question here. What are the best ways to deal with the more severe side effects of taking the second vaccine shot?
Any non-steroidal, like painkiller, anti-inflammatory drug, like Tylenol, Panadol, ibuprofen, acetaminophen, all of those things are okay after you get the vaccine. You don't want to take it before you get your vaccine, because you want to give your body a chance to be exposed to the pathogen in the vaccine and give you that robust immune response. So once that response is mounted, then you can take whatever pain reliever or fever reducer, etc. I definitely took a lot of Tylenol after my second dose to deal with like headaches and body aches and that type of thing.
Yeah. If for some reason you are having symptoms beyond the regular things like body aches, pains, fever, headache, it may be something unrelated to the vaccine, so you may need to go to the hospital for that if it's beyond that,
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the last question we'll take from the comments before we wrap. Can anyone who has asthma or any respiratory ailments take the vaccine?
For sure, because people with respiratory illnesses, asthma, etc., those people were actually part of the priority group for vaccination because they are more at risk when it comes to COVID-19 illness. So if they get infected with COVID-19, they're more likely to have like severe illness or other complications because of those pre-existing conditions. So definitely prioritize for vaccination. I actually have asthma. I mean, I have like mild asthma, and I got I definitely got my vaccine because I'm not trying to have COVID with asthma.
All right, nice. So I'll let Angèle give us her closing remarks before Dr. Asha Williams gives us your closing remarks, and then I will tell everybody bye after.
Okay. I think what the population needs to understand is that, everything in medicine, whether it's education, counseling, medical management, surgery, or even a vaccine being administered, there are so many things that have to be passed and so many stringent criteria that they have to pass to be able to be administered and given to you as the public. And basically all these studies and all this research and clinical trials that are done for these interventions really proves that the benefit outweighs the risk, and that is the whole basis of medicine. If the benefit does not outweigh the risk, then we can't give it to anyone. But essentially, we can't offer you, we can't educate you on it. It's not an option anymore. And I think really and truly, in a situation like this with these such high numbers, I think vaccinating yourself, obviously, we have to go in with the mindset that yes, we are protecting ourselves, but in a public health crisis such as this, where we want to go back to normal, we need to take the stance of, I'm vaccinating myself, but I'm also protecting the community by my vaccination. And I think, if everybody could sort of have that mindset, you'd get to do all the things that you want to do, whatever that may be. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just echo some of those sentiments in terms of substantial amounts of research being done on these vaccines. And there are probably almost 150 different vaccines against COVID-19 that are in various stages of development. But the ones that are currently approved are sort of like the cream of the crop. Those are the ones that pass through the fire of all the clinical trials and the assessment by the World Health Organizations and organization and other bodies, regulatory bodies. So I hope that gives people a sense of comfort, a little sense of safety. But I completely understand. I'm just as anxious and uncertain as you in this pandemic. I want to see my family, so I get it. But in times like these, I think it's important to remember that yes, people have been doing research in these areas for years. There are people who are experts in these fields, and all of the information is out there.
Yeah.
If you have questions, you're uncertain, talk to somebody who can translate the information for you. There's a lot of misinformation circulating, so be careful where you get your advice from, what resources you're using. And you know, vaccination is something that has been with human society for decades. I mean, we wouldn't be here if our parents and grandparents and great grandparents didn't take shots like rubella, measles, mumps,
Polio.
polio. Yeah, and back then there was even less research done on these vaccines, even less information was available on these vaccines, but they stepped out in faith to protect themselves and protect their families and future generations. So I think people just need to remember that as well. Like, it's not just about protecting yourself, but it's about your community. And obviously, we all want to kind of get things back to normal, get things rolling again.
You know, thank you so much, Dr. Williams. We really appreciate it, for taking the time to, you know, educate us a little bit more. And probably, I hope people are able, for the community that's not on here on social media, be able to take this information, you know, to your relatives and people who really just, you know, still maybe unsure. Oh, just one more thing, sorry. Just a reminder, obviously, you know, as healthcare professionals, we have to respect your choice and your autonomy. Absolutely no one can force you to take a vaccine against your will. So it is your choice at the end of the day, and you should never feel forced or persuaded in a way that, you know, it's overwhelming, that you feel like you have to do this. Just know that you do have rights. Yeah.
For sure. So for sure, you all have your rights. It is a personal choice. It's up to you to make a decision. But only ask that you think about everyone else around, about your family, think about people with comorbidities, think about the elderly as well. When you make
and the children also, think of your kids.
Now, Dr. Astra Williams, you want to plug your social medias, etc.?
So on my Instagram, like if you go to my IGTV and some of my reels, I do have a bunch of videos about the vaccines, debunking myths and explaining some things about them. I also do a lot of TikTok, so I'm Dr. _ Astra Williams on TikTok. And yeah, I'm on Twitter too, but you know, I have like a professional Twitter and a personal Twitter, so I'm not really gonna, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we'll definitely check it out, and probably we can just reshare some of these so people could, you know, have a look at some of the work you've been doing on social media.
Yeah, and feel free to hit me up in the DMs. I'll get around to your questions eventually when I have some free time, if you have any questions.
All right, ladies. Well, thank you again so much for taking the time to speak to us here on this platform and give us and provide us with that information and that little education so we can make a better educated and informed decision about our personal choices with the vaccination moving forward. As we hear right now, to the people of Trinidad and Tobago that are locked in with us, we ask you all to continue to abide by the rules and regulations put in place by the government. Make sure you'll stay in home, make sure inside, and let's all try to get. Yeah, this is hashtag Let Me Take a Shot TT right here, and we have a lot more in store for you all over the next coming weeks in terms of making that decision and providing you all, the public, with education and information about the vaccine, the COVID-19 situation, and just anything else that you may have questions or need information about. Cannibal Tribe is going to try their best to educate and inform. So ladies, again, thank you so much. We appreciate you all taking the time, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me on. Bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye. Thanks, guys.
Bye.